Good evening again. It's the Imaginary Gallery and TJ, your host. Tonight is a strange combination of concepts all intertwined together. However, I was thinking about it recently and realized it actually is interesting and may actually help some of you decode what you have gone through or what you are going through. It may seem on the surface like your narcissistic, narcopathic, whoever cluster B, you may be under the impression that he or she just doesn't learn from his or her mistakes because you see the same things happening. Well, I used to believe this too, especially when I was involved with a few. Now I think about it and realize I know what's going on now because we'll use the example of you found this person who love bombed you and said you were the one, and yet eventually after you shacked up or started seeing each other, you'd find out that he strayed one night and did some meaningless thing that he told you it sounded like he didn't even want to do, which you, of course, are skeptical, because who does that if they don't want to? But anyway, that's a different story. But you lecture him. You tell him, how could you do that? I thought this and I thought that. Well, you think at that point, I told him this won't happen again. And then guess what? It happens again. And this time it's another excuse. Oh, I am whatever. I just did that because you didn't call me back. Something like that. But anyway, we're jumping ahead. It's very easy to think that this person you've chosen to be in your life just keeps making these mistakes, and when you scold him or her, they still do it again, and so you start to think, my partner doesn't learn from mistakes. Well, I'm here to dispel this myth because I've given it a lot of thought after several different experiences, and here's the deal. Here's how it is. When you met your narcissistic cluster B narcopath, remember we discussed in the other series about the stages of narcissistic abuse? The very first stage is the idealization phase. Well, remember what happened in that phase was you, being a real, genuine person and happy about it, met this other person and just said what was on your mind, shared what you feel, shared what you thought, and so on. Well, this ties to another concept I just did a video on recently of mirroring. Chances are, if you're dealing with one of these people, this person has mirrored you from the beginning. You probably noticed that at the beginning, he or she was very quiet, because that's the assessment phase, when he or she is listening to you and hearing your vulnerabilities. And because you're a real person, for example, you might say, oh, I am really against violence against children, child abuse. Oh, it's just so, and you won't even, you'll just tell, like, examples of how you feel about it. Well, as far as the other person goes, you're anti-violence. Check in their brain. So, when he is talking or she is talking to you, you'll hear the same kind of stuff, mirroring of, oh, I think it's terrible that kids are abused too. In fact, I saw this happen once and that, and whatever. But that's mirroring. Well, this relates to the first part we discussed about the learning from mistakes. We're assuming that you had made it clear in your interactions with the cluster B, that you don't want him or her going off with somebody else if you two are together. So, of course, once again, he will say, oh, well, I feel the same way. You better not run off with someone else. So, of course, working as planned. Problem is, because you've been brainwashed by a monster with no boundaries who has swooped down into your life and mirrored your value system, yet you end up finding out, oh, he did this thing that night, oh, and he did this thing that night. You start to think, he keeps doing the same thing. Well, that makes you come to the conclusion of, my partner does not learn from his or her mistakes. And the fallacy in this is this, the debunking of whatever is this. You have to look at the approach or the agenda. So if I'm just a genuine student wanting to meet you, and I tell you every detail I can think of my life, great. But the problem here is the narcopathic person has mirrored you so well for so long, you think, wow, I've got a close connection. This is great. And so you actually fall for the ruse. But the point of this is that, let's say that he or she finally says, oh, I want to be with you and you only, and you fall for it and let it move in with you, for example. Well, as we discussed before, you'll live with it. I'll have to leave and go and then come back and smell like sex perfume and red lipstick smeared everywhere or something, which leads you again to believe this person does not learn from mistakes. Well, guess what? Because they have a different agenda, which these examples I just gave are from a very incompetent scam artist, but for like the regular one, scam artist, they learn from their mistakes, but their version of a mistake differs very much from your version of a mistake. And that is where the discrepancy comes in. Because for these people who are monsters out to prey and be a predator on other people, they're different from the rest of us. So what they end up doing is they learn from their mistakes, but it goes more like this. Okay, I found a spouse. She bought my devotion to her. She believes I really love her. So I want to sneak out tomorrow night with this hot chick I work with. So the wife comes home and he says, oh, I just thought I should tell you, tomorrow night I'm going to a function with my business, which is fabrication or a partial truth. And of course the wife is like, oh, okay. Well, that's the start of this. So if he goes, wife might be suspicious or skeptical. Something's fishy. And let's just say that he goes to the Motel and takes this chick with him, and then comes back home. But when you or the spouse is doing laundry and reaches in the pocket, finds a receipt that says the No-Tell Motel. Well, there's a clue. Something's fishy. So if he's confronted, well, busted. The narcopath is busted. And as a result of this, he, or narcopath, learns, oh, I better not do that again, because the questions come up. Why is this receipt here? What does this mean? I knew you were up to no good, and because you didn't see what really happened, any number of fictitious, fake excuses will come up, like, oh, we decided to go to that motel for our meeting. something like that. But see, because the agenda is different. The narcopath's agenda is to have you, or the victim, or the target, and also be able to do this other thing and not be caught. Well, you caught him, so he learns from his mistakes by next time learning to shred the receipt. So this doesn't happen again. And according to the narcopath, he's done nothing wrong. The only thing wrong is that you looked in his pockets and found the no-tell motel receipt. So you can see here, they're both playing on different playing fields, because he is trying to maintain and pacify her while also pursuing other interests, which is typical for these people, and then telling you, the skeptical one, that you are nosy, that you have a problem. And this can go on for a while, and the reason for it all, or the basis, is the beginning mirroring that the narcissist shares your viewpoints on fidelity, when obviously it doesn't. But again, you don't need to know that. And I covered this in another video, but for these cluster bead people, in their twisted little brain and mind, their morality is, if I get caught doing it, oh, well, I made a mistake. Oh, I'm wrong. Oh, sorry. But if they don't get caught doing it, it's the right thing to do.